Adelaide, Australia. Pictures of the first unexplained crop circle ever found on this continent. The strange pattern in a suburban wheat field was first discovered by an airline passenger.
I just looked down at this field and I said to myself, that's a crop circle, because I've seen pictures of them in England, these crop circles, and it just looked exactly the same.
Measuring 50 feet across, the crop circle has no apparent signs of human intervention, a fact that ufologist Colin Norris sees as an indication of the circle's link to an extraterrestrial visit.
To be as so fine in itself, the quality, the markings, the whole thing, it just could not be done by normal human people.
Norris believes that the Adelaide crop circle is only the latest in a string of Australian UFO activity going back more than a decade.
So, you know, we add the whole lot up, so how can we keep burying our heads in the sand and being so indifferent to the facts and the reality of the UFO phenomenon?
50 years about new sightings of a mysterious craft and contact with a large alien being in the small village of Yatzitz in central Israel.
In this holy land, on this ancient soil, people with polar views struggle to coexist because this is the birthplace of three great world religions. And that is why, ufologists tell us, it is perhaps destined that alien visitors would choose this place as their Mecca too. During the spring of 1993, in Kadima, Israel, a small coastal town between Tel Aviv and Haifa, three women, unknown to each other, all reported similar alien visitations.
He was very tall. He was almost 3 meters tall.
He was a giant, very tall, with big eyes. His face was more oval-shaped. His eyes were shiny like a spotlight, glittering.
And all around, there were as if flickering lights, like that.
Before I could move, he disappeared.
Each of these encounters occurred on a Saturday, the Jewish Sabbath, and at the same exact time and in the same exact manner. And in each case, strange circles were left behind after the encounter.
The grass became, within a day, completely dry. It was before high as this grass all around. Became completely dry, and eventually, after 2 or 3 days, lay down just like the way it's here.
Most recently, 2 years after the Kadima visits, the otherwise quiet town of Yatzitz is suddenly in a panic after village leader Herzl Cosentini reports a frightening encounter with an alien being. It is Friday evening at the beginning of the Jewish Sabbath.
I was visiting a friend whose name is Danny Azar. I was at his place at around 8:30. About 9:30, something passed by the house that caused shaking. It rattled the windows and doors. I was curious to find out what happened, so I opened the door. I saw something very strange. I was very scared by it. As soon as my friend saw it, he fell down because he was so scared.
And they didn't try to follow it. What they do is lock themselves in the room and call the police.
Doran Rotem is a horticulturist by trade, but for 20 years, he has also been one of Israel's most respected UFO investigators. Rotem interviewed Herzl and Danny the morning after their encounter. He discovered that the men reported a creature very similar to that reported by the women of Kadima.
It's hard for me to describe its face because the face was projecting something. I don't know whether it was heat or blinding light, but I do remember that its face was glowing intensely. It had like 2 eyes, then something around the head that was blinding. It looked like a human being, 3 to 3.5 meters tall, perhaps 1.5 meters wide. I estimate its weight at half a ton.
In the field where the men claimed to have seen the creature, there was no crop circle, but a calling card of a different kind. Strange footprints, unlike any the two farmers had ever seen before.
I was scared, and I am not one to get scared at all. I was in the combat unit in the army. I was a driver in the Sinai Desert. But when I saw the footprints here, I got scared.
The tracks that were left behind by the strange being Herzl and Danny insist was here have confounded Israeli police and the professional tracker who was called in to analyze the prints.
The tracker was amazed to find an 8-kilometer trail to the nearest village. He says he never saw such tracks before. And he claimed that any animal on an 8-kilometer trail would leave at least some feces on the ground, which never was found.
By measuring the distance between the unidentifiable footprints, investigators have estimated its stride to be approximately 50 inches, more than twice the length of an average human stride.
It has a huge front track that stuck into the ground to 35 centimeters, and then after it stuck, a little feminine heel appeared in the back. It doesn't find on humans, it doesn't find on animals, so it indicates that there was something else over there.
Herzl Cosentini is a man who claims he has never believed in aliens or UFOs. But after his encounter, Herzl has had to re-examine his beliefs.
As of today, my curiosity is sparked, and I would be interested in taking a look at what it's all about. We were raising cows once, horses. We've seen everything. A thing like this, it's not a thing you see every day.
This is the plaster cast of one of the Yatzit's footprints. For now, it's all the UFO researchers have to go on, because since Herzl Cosentini's sighting, the creature has vanished. The top-secret military testing facility known as Area 51 isn't quite as top-secret as the government would like. Worldwide press attention has focused the eyes of the world on the skies above Nevada. But while amateur ufologists clamor for a glimpse of Area 51, the real action, the experts claim, has moved eastward to the government's new Black Project playground.
The beautiful San Luis Valley in south-central Colorado is no stranger to paranormal activity, both in the air and on the ground.
Everybody in this town has seen UFOs.
We saw lights come off of this side of the mountain over here, come clear across and go over the top of these mountains on this side.
This area is like the center of mutilation phenomenon.
There's an awful lot of strange things that occur in the mysterious valley of Colorado.
It's developed into a pattern of activity people here have learned to live with. But lately, the skies above this high-altitude alpine valley have started getting crowded, leading many longtime residents to speculate that the military has moved in without notice.
I'm a supporter of the military, but I don't believe in doing things that we don't need to do.
It really makes me furious that they continue to fly over these children.
Patricia Richmond has been a school teacher in the valley for more than 25 years. She worries about an accident.
First time I had an encounter with them were two jets flying just almost about ground level. That person endangered not only his life, but the life of every child and every employee in that building.
While most residents appreciate the need for national security, they believe the secrecy surrounding testing here only protects the military, not them.
When it does happen, there should be accountability from the commanders, but apparently the commanders here don't feel that they should feel that they want to do anything.
Lieutenant Colonel Buck Buckingham is airspace manager of the Colorado Air National Guard. He says the accusations about unsafe flyovers are simply untrue.
The Air National Guard policy is we fly no lower than 500 feet, which is what we do. We did have calls about the schools in Moffett. We did have calls about people in a vehicle getting attacked. They really weren't getting attacked. They weren't being used as targets. They perceived it that way because of how low we were.
We do have a lot of people living here, and I suspect there are desert areas that they could fly and do their drills, which doesn't have any population in it. So why they need to fly over this area is not particularly clear, unless there's some hidden agenda.
Because the military isn't talking, speculation about that hidden agenda has led many in this close-knit community to fear the worst. Some people believe that their livestock and they themselves are part of a Black Project experiment involving extraterrestrial technology. Ray Cook, a third-generation Valleyite and former NASA engineer, believes the Pentagon has a more sinister purpose.
What's occurring in many cases is you have a training activity which might be conducted by a guard unit, for example, that could be used to cloak the introduction of a super-secret aircraft.
And what they may be cloaking, he says, is the go-ahead to build the Western Range Complex, known as the WRC. According to military officials, the WRC is still in the proposal stage, but area realtor Bob Senderoff fears this new military test center is much further along.
If they really need this airspace, maybe there's something they're not telling us. And if there's something that they're not telling us, then I think we have every right in the world to be concerned.
I think if those people down there, I don't know what their agenda is. I don't know if it's a personal agenda, a personal attack on the military.
Sometimes you see some things in the military that make you very upset. And sometimes I think to get to the root of the problem is I think the military's been a bureaucracy in our country for 200 years, and they've forgotten who they're accountable to sometimes and who they really work for.
According to documents obtained by sightings, the Western Range Complex flight corridor may extend south into New Mexico, rivaling the airspace now reserved for Area 51.
Some 70% of the increase that they proposed here is going to be flown by aircraft other than the local Air National Guard. And that big category of other, and of course other gives you the opportunity of mixing in flights by black programs on testing weaponry that they otherwise would not want to test out in the open.
We have no black projects. We have no laser capability. So whatever is going on down there that they think is, this gentleman, this unit, the Colorado Guard, knows nothing about it.
If you were going to run all your black projects, experimental craft, and you could throw in a few UFO-type things to throw people off the track just enough to get them talking about aliens and UFOs, that it would be a great smokescreen and cover for any kind of operation you wanted to run.
I am suggesting we call the military to Window Rock and have them give us a report as to what they're doing.
I would say, quit lying. Tell us the truth.
Frustration is mounting as more and more people on the ground come to believe that their skies are being turned into the 21st century replacement for Area 51. Recent revelations about secret radiation testing nearby in the 1950s only confirm the fear that residents might be sitting ducks.
There has to be an integrated plan. And that integrated plan is something that they should lay on the table. And give people an opportunity to evaluate it, to determine if that's something we really want to support, instead of trying to do it on a clandestine basis.
The eyewitnesses that sightings spoke with, particularly members of the Navajo Nation, are more than just angry. They're disappointed in a government they have supported and in a military they've served. And they wonder, if we can't be trusted, then who can?
Next.
Aliens may have created universe, a claim based on the findings of not an overzealous ufologist, but a distinguished professor of astronomy.
At the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, an astronomy professor is shaking up the world of cosmology with a startling theory about the origin of our galaxy. Professor Edward Harrison proposes that our world is the work of a superintelligence from another world.
One usually says God did it or designed it, and that's the end of it. But now we're beginning to see how, in fact, intelligent life can actually create a universe.
Citing Einstein's cosmic theories, Harrison believes that advanced beings from another universe would have had the tools necessary to forge a new universe inside the crucible of a black hole.
It goes into inflation like a bubble that bursts out of the side of this universe. It inflates and separates. Then begins the Big Bang, and then it becomes a universe eventually.
And Harrison speculates that one reason such superintelligence might have created our universe was simply as a kind of alien science project.
Our universe may not be the fittest. One might well see ways of creating fitter universes. Having created a universe, you can transfer into it, occupy it, and explore it.
And he does not rule out the possibility that there may be some among us who are the direct descendants of those extraterrestrial explorers.
Years ago, in Egypt, in the Maya Kingdom, and in North America, people inscribed their pyramids, temples, and totems with the same story of a vastly sophisticated civilization that had vanished beneath the waves. Before telephones, telegraph, or transatlantic trade, they all knew the same story. Was it simply a case of coincidental legend, or were these widely separated people all recalling historical fact?
There's a great myth memory that haunts mankind. It's a memory of a lost civilization and a lost continent. And yet, we do have a continent on our planet which is truly lost, which is the continent of Antarctica, buried beneath thousands of billions of tons of ice.
Graham Hancock is the author of Fingerprints of the Gods. In it, Hancock speculates that the lost civilization we know today as Atlantis may actually have been in Antarctica before it was covered with ice, and several ancient maps support Hancock's theory.
One of the best known of these maps is the Piri-Reis map, drawn up by a well-known Turkish admiral in 1513 in Constantinople.
The Piri-Reis map is thought to have been based on even older maps stored in Egypt in the legendary Library of Alexandria. The map shows the correct contours of the northern Antarctic coastline. Remarkable, because in 1513, there was no sonar, radar, or deep drilling technology to see this outline.
The Antarctic Peninsula is buried under mile-thick ice.
Richard Noon is a millennial researcher who has reached conclusions similar to Hancock's, but with a deadly twist.
And when we mapped it using very advanced modern electronics, the lay of the land that we got matches the topography of this ancient map.
After studying the Piri-Reis map, the United States Air Force concurred. The map showed Antarctica, ice-free.
The Earth apparently rolls along with long periods of quiet, and then an event which is described as a pole shift takes place.
The theory of pole shift suggests that when the ice at the poles is not in balance, the crust of the Earth can actually shift or slip around the core. The relationship between the continents would not change, but land in warmer parts of the planet would move into colder areas, and vice versa. This theory was first offered by former Keene College professor Charles Hapgood. It may sound far-fetched, but when it was proposed to Albert Einstein, he found it theoretically possible.
Were there to be a crustal displacement, the consequences would be truly cataclysmic. Mile-high tidal waves surging across all the continents of the Earth. Perhaps in this, we have the origins of the great story of the flood of Noah and of other flood myths around the world. And most important of all, it explains how we lose a whole continent and a whole civilization.
And Hancock warns, if it happened before, it could happen again.
Many people have rightly pointed to a dangerous conjunction of planets that will take place on 5/5/2000, the 5th of May, 2000. On that date, 5 planets will line up on the other side of the sun in a direct line with the Earth itself.
If on that day a slight nudge is exerted on the crust of the Earth by this particular alignment, then the crust of the Earth as a whole unit will slide over the more plastic viscous underlayer.
I think it's a good hypothesis, worthy of much further testing, that we look beneath the ice that now covers the Antarctic Peninsula. There, I suspect, we may find the cities, the great engineering works of an entire, advanced, and forgotten human civilization.
Why do we continue to be fascinated by Atlantis? Perhaps it's because our modern world resembles that once great civilization in so many ways. And as violent seismic activity appears to be on the increase worldwide, perhaps we're also fascinated by Atlantis because we fear that history will soon repeat itself.
The truth is out there, at least that's what the believers say. The skeptics take a lot more convincing when it comes to the topic of unidentified flying objects. UFOs have always captured our imagination. In fact, Hollywood has dined out on them for decades. But for the average person who's seen something that they can't explain, well, where do they turn? Hollywood's not much use. The RAAF and the CSIRO don't have any official interest in them. And short of an all-out invasion, it's the last thing police want to know about. Such was the dilemma facing pilot Mark Muscat. He reported a close encounter to the Weather Bureau and was directed to UFO researcher Colin Norris. And both men are in our Adelaide studio this morning. Good morning, gents.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mark, tell us what you saw.
Well, I saw 5, maybe 6 orange lights, which appeared to be, were travelling in my direction at about 2,000 feet last Wednesday night at about 8:45.
You were in a light plane coming into land?
Yes, I was actually with a friend I'd met from Germany, and was just showing her around Adelaide at night, and she certainly got to see a little bit more than what we normally do.
What did you think they were at first?
At first I thought it was an aircraft which was in controlled airspace without a clearance. So I contacted air traffic control to verify that, and they told me that there was no other aircraft in my vicinity.
How close did they get to your aircraft?
They 20, 30 metres.
That's close.
Very close, yes. Yeah.
Did you think at any time they were going to make contact with you?
Well, I was hoping they wouldn't. I was trying to avoid them.
You had to take evasive action?
I made a slight alteration as I entered the circle which they seemed to have formed, yes.
Wow. What do you make of all that, Colin?
Oh, it's excellent. You know, I thought of, when he told me the story, I thought of Valentich. You know, the chappie that disappeared over the Bass Strait.
Yeah.
And I don't want to upset him, but he seems a pretty tough guy to me. But, you know, Valentich was taken away, and we've had all these other pilots, particularly in the American Air Forces and so forth. And you've got to look at the people travelling over from Perth and on the highway. And, of course, in my collection of information, it's just overwhelming, and his just matches that.
So, and people on the ground actually saw these lights as well, which I...
Yes, they did, and I've even got phone calls from people saying I was a pilot, and I heard Mark talking back to the control tower, and they said his voice was quite disturbed, and there was crackling on the radio. And again, a young chap. Now this will bring me back to your studio if it comes out. But this chap is a pilot, and he said that his lad, a 13-year-old, was outside with his camera, rushed out and took photos. Now, he said, I hope the hell he got it onto the craft and the lights. Yeah. If that's the case, it'll just be too delightful from my point of view.
You've already got photos of a lot of other sightings and evidence of something going on there. Quickly talk us through these, Colin, if we can just go through them. What's this exactly? This round
well, that was taken at Barmera, back here about 15 years ago, and the people there were having a look at the markings on the ground.
Okay, let's move through these shots. We've got some incredible...
This one was down at Wallasey, near border town, and you can see the scooped out area of the main centre part of the craft, and then there's a couple of 3 little prod marks around it, and the people on the farm saw a ball of red light in the early part of the evening. This one that you're showing me is a winner. It's been checked by all photographic people, Polaroid and other scientific people. It was taken at Roxby Downs, and when the Air Force sent fighters up after it, it did like the thing did in the North Sea the other day, and said farewell and left them for dead. This one was taken at a northern suburb of Adelaide, and you can see the blue light on the top. The thing had tipped over on its side, and the bloke fell over backwards taking pictures of the UFO.
Are there more UFOs around South Australia and Adelaide than there are anywhere else in the world, and certainly in Australia?
Yes, well, South Australia seems to catch the UFO phenomena because
we do have our Woomera. We have what we call the communication system being built here, and the MFP is part of it. And of course, there is the honing bar that was reported by Captain Bruce Cathy of New Zealand when he wrote his book, Harmonic 33. That is right over Adelaide. So,
Colin?
Yes, we got every opportunity of seeing a lot of UFOs.
Well, nice to know you're there keeping an eye on that stuff for us. Colin and Mark, thank you very much this morning, gentlemen.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Colin Norris and Mark Muscat, that would be very scary to be in your plane and have something 20 or 30 metres away. I mean, you'd have a fair old look at it if it was that close.
And a few of them. Boy, scary
Absolutely.
stuff. Spooky.
We'll be back with more of Today in just a moment.
Happenings, which will never be adequately or entirely explained by logic or subsequent investigation, unquote. It's a public declaration of something many pilots have privately known for years. Even at 30,000 feet, there are UFOs.
Recently, Sightings was contacted by 2 air traffic controllers, each describing the same disturbing incident in the skies above New Mexico on the night of May 26, 1995. Here is part of one of the controllers' message, as recorded on the Sightings hotline, electronically altered to protect the caller's identity.
Yeah, I work as an air traffic controller, and a pilot of America West Airlines had seen an object between 300 and 400 feet long.
Through the Freedom of Information Act, a Sightings investigative team has obtained the actual radio transmission between a flight control center in Albuquerque and an America West Boeing 757. Based on these transmissions, we've been able to recreate a startling encounter between a commercial aircraft loaded with passengers and an unknown craft 6 miles above the Earth. The voices are real. The words are not scripted. This is the actual transmission recorded at the moment the UFO was sighted.
Yeah, off to our 3 o'clock. Get some strokes out there. Can you tell us what it is?
But air traffic control cannot tell America West Flight 564 what it is. The object is not on radar. The tone of the radio communication begins to change.
There's nothing on the radar on that object that's up in the air? It's up in the air? Affirmative.
No, no one knows anything about it. What's the altitude about?
I don't know, probably right around 30,000 or so, and the length is unbelievable.
Albuquerque controllers contact the military for an earthbound explanation.
Anna, go ahead. Hey, do you guys know if there was anything like a tethered balloon or anything released that should be above tie band?
No, we haven't heard nothing about it.
Okay. Guy at 39,000 says he sees something at 30,000 if the length is unbelievable and it has a strobe on it.
Uh-huh.
This is not good. Okay.
What does that mean?
I don't know. It's a UFO, so...
He's right. It's right in time. No, we haven't seen nothing like that.
Okay, keep your eyes open.
Foxtrot Kilo.
Dr. Richard Haynes is an aerospace engineer and aviation expert. For the last 30 years, he's been conducting independent research on pilot sightings of UFOs. His collection of pilot reports is the largest in the world. Sightings provided Dr. Haynes with the America West transmissions for his analysis.
In fact, where we initially spotted it was between the weather and us, and when the lightning, you could see a dark object, and it was pretty eerie looking.
Well, the pilot has just discussed the sighting again in a little more detail with air traffic control at Albuquerque. And he said that he saw a dark object because it was back illuminated. Basically, lightning in the cloud at some distance caused the object to be visible. He then said it looked eerie.
3 of us up here saw it.
We have only Dr. Haynes' analysis of the event because all attempts to interview the America West crew were politely but firmly denied. There is no law that prohibits them from speaking out, at least not any written law.
They don't encourage you reporting it, that's for sure.
This man, a United Airlines pilot for 35 years, also had a UFO encounter at 30,000 feet. But it is only now that he is retired and anonymous that he's willing to describe his sighting.
When it was ready to leave, it departed at a very high rate of speed, accelerating as it went. and disappeared off into the distance at speeds that I couldn't even estimate. The other crew members have never come forward.
Alitalia pilot Graham Shepard is also familiar with the industry's code of silence.
It is a commercial judgment that pilots shouldn't speak about this. Unfortunately, it's a fact of life that any UFO, alliance with a UFO sighting or anything unusual about a particular crew member will downgrade the potential of that airline to earn maximum profits.
Despite the airline industry's efforts to silence its pilots, these transmission tapes speak for them. After the New Mexico controller's initial call to NORAD was laughed off, NORAD called back.
We had someone call here earlier about a pilot spotting an unidentified flying object.
Yep, that's us.
Okay, well, hey, we're tracking a search-only track kind of up where that might have happened. It's tracking about 390 knots. We've been tracking it for about 3-4 minutes now. I mean, to be going that fast, it's got to be up kind of high.
Yeah, you got no code on it, huh?
Nope, it's search-only.
It seems that the radar controller was tracking an object, an unknown, that wasn't transponding. And by law, any craft in controlled airspace must have a transponder. But it's very interesting that ultimately it was seen by the radar controller.
This is an historic UFO event. Audio tape confirms that 3 highly trained commercial pilots witnessed an enormous UFO, a UFO confirmed on radar by NORAD Air Defense Command. This is one encounter that cannot be dismissed as a hallucination or a hoax. Something was up there. Are we prepared for its return?
I've listened to the American West tape, and my opinion is that it's absolutely authentic. If handled correctly, this tape could be something of a breakthrough.
First time in 15 years I've ever seen anything like it.
In Mexico City, a 5-year-long flap of UFO activity has commercial pilots running scared. There have been several near misses. Under the auspices of the Mexican Aviation Union, the pilots have formed a coalition to demand a comprehensive, government-backed investigation into the Mexico City flap.
Spots, Israel has been a blank page.
When I researched my book, the only public mention of UFOs that I found were from 1952, from Haifa. There were 2 sightings. That is all I could find until Shikmona.
Barry Chamish is an author and journalist who has written about a recent rash of UFO sightings and encounters that began suddenly in 1987.
This is on the evening of Rosh Hashanah in 1987. Ami Achrai is returning home from Tel Aviv, his home in Kiryat Bialik, near Haifa. There is a beach called Shikmona, just before the city of Haifa. He sees a red object fly into the air, hover, dip.
Underneath there was a red glowing spot about 1.5 meters in diameter. There were immense flashlights, and there was a very loud noise, a whirlpool, as if a helicopter was going to crash.
He stops his car, gets out of the car, sees the object return, and there is a huge flash.
It suddenly disappeared. Only a big red spot remained, and in a second it leaped into the sky and vanished.
Ami was shaken by the inexplicable UFO encounter. He tried to put it behind him, to dismiss it as an asteroid or a comet, but something drew him back to the scene. And in the daylight, he found concrete remnants of his experience.
Imagine intense heat, burning sand and vegetation in the shape of a UFO. Inscribed in the right-hand corner, a clear-cut picture of an astronaut in front of the dashboard.
Not only was there an indelible image in the sand, testing at the site revealed the ground itself had taken on unusual properties.
The land was 671% more magnetic than usual land.
At the request of sightings, soil samples were taken from the scorched earth at Shikmona Beach for a detailed analysis by biophysicist W.C. Levengood. His findings confirmed that the ground had new characteristics.
One was sort of astounded by the tremendous change in the ratios of the elements. For example, ordinary zinc was increased 104 times, whereas there are other elements stayed absolutely the same.
But that finding paled in comparison to what Dr. Levengood found while he was preparing to take a photomicrograph of the soil sample.
As I was adjusting the camera to get the photograph, to my astonishment, the soil appeared to be melting. What I found here was that there was a coating on the soil of a very low melting material. I have consulted with a geophysicist, and there is no explanation. This does not occur in nature. There's no natural way that this amount of hydrocarbon would be on the soil.
5 months after the Shikmona Beach sighting, just 1 mile away in the city of Haifa, Rosetta Kalfan and her family spotted bizarre lights in the sky. They were able to film the UFO with a home movie camera.
We were chatting, and suddenly my sister looked up towards the window and saw a glittering light in the air. I got up quickly, and we both rushed over to the window. I told her, "Do you know what that is? That is a UFO."
The light was golden, like nothing I've ever seen in my life. A real light beam radiating out from it. It was shocking, truly shocking.
There was a UFO that stayed there 17 minutes over the sea and then disappeared very quickly until it became small as a star.
You see windows, and this is possibly the most outstanding feature. And certainly in the film, you'll see that at the beginning, Rafi Malka is clever enough to get background. There's no mistaking this as part of the features of the hill or the Haifa area. It's not a natural feature, it's certainly dangling in the air. It moves, it has lights, and it was witnessed by experts. I believe that it was a tremendously documented UFO.
2 years later, in 1991, Yossi Ben Ma'as was leaving his real estate business in Haifa for his home in nearby Beit Shan. Suddenly, out of nowhere, he was nearly blinded by a brilliant shaft of light.
There was a huge sheet of light. It was right before my eyes. It was spectacular. It was a very calming light, but I was afraid it would go to Beit Shan, where my friends and family are. So all of a sudden, it changes course, as if it was reading my mind, a kind of telepathy between us.
Yossi immediately called the Beit Shan Police Department.
Chief of Police, Yitzchak Mordechai is awoken at 3 in the morning, goes outside, sees an enormous object in the air.
It looked a little bit like a boomerang, but it was a shape that I never saw before. It had a unique power and color, a special glow which was very different from anything I saw before. I didn't know how to react.
He radios in to headquarters, calls the Air Force, says, "This is what I got."
They asked for the exact location of the object. I gave them the location, and they couldn't find the object on the radar.
Because of Beit Shan's close proximity to the Jordanian border, the Israeli Defense Forces sent 300 troops into the area to track the unidentified craft.
It was dragging a convoy of armed men for 3 hours on a trail up to the Jordanian border, which is a very sensitive place, but it seems to know where the Jordanian border is, and heads back. At 5:45 in the morning, in broad daylight, it disappeared in a flash.
Chamish has developed a controversial theory that these 3 UFO sightings are part of a pattern dating back to biblical times.
People who have been studying UFOs seriously around the world have reached the consensus that the Bible is a convincing UFO story. I came to the same conclusion that the Old Testament, from the pillar, the cloud that led the Hebrews out of Egypt, that glowed at night and stopped the Egyptians, all the way through the prophets, were, in fact, UFO related.
Chamish also believes that stories of alien abductions in Kadima, as reported previously on sightings, are also part of the centuries-old pattern.
Shikmona, they were announcing in black and white, "We are here." At Beit Shan, they're saying, "All right, now we've got 500-600 of you seeing us, and you can shoot at us if you want to." Kadima was stage 3, "We want to meet you."
And stage 4, according to Chamish, is foretold in a prophetic passage from the Bible.
From Kedem, they shall go up to Jerusalem. In other words, Kadima is the next hop towards the revelation of the UFOs in Jerusalem.
The investigation in Israel is ongoing. A sightings team is now following up on late reports of activity in the town of Yatzitz on the Mediterranean Sea. An eyewitness there claims that he has evidence of UFO contact in the form of mysterious footprints. Sightings will bring you more on this story after the investigation is complete. Here's 6 hours of provocative Air Force audio tapes have been cataloged and condensed. So now the public can finally hear for themselves what happened when a UFO appeared over one of America's largest military bases. Carla Wohl reports.
Edwards Air Force Base is one of the largest aircraft test centers in the world. The people who work here know the difference between an experimental aircraft and a meteor. But in 1965, they couldn't figure this one out.
I understand you got some UFOs. Roger. Whereabouts are they? Edwards and Victorville area.
Key excerpts from the declassified tapes have been organized into an audio documentary. I spoke with Sam Sherman, the documentary producer. Why did you decide to do something with them?
I felt the public should know something about it. It's a subject that has been ridiculed for many years.
It was a daunting task to make sense out of hours of tape from dozens of different sources.
I took all the significant pieces of the conversations from phone patches and ground-to-air radio, base-to-base communication, and put them all together so it was like a dramatic program.
Sherman took 8 months to assemble the collection of tapes into a concise and comprehensible account of the Edwards UFO incident.
I was stunned to find out that a squadron of 12 UFOs was over Edwards and that there was an alert status and that 5 other bases were involved and NORAD was involved. It shocked me.
This is the tower in Edwards. We have an object now. Open the seal. I can make out red and white flashing light.
The air traffic controller on duty that night has agreed to speak publicly about the UFO incident for the first time in 3 decades. That interview on an upcoming edition of Sightings.
Flap that's been ongoing since 1994. Brilliant spherical UFOs are appearing with uncanny regularity over northeastern Brazil. We sent a sightings team to investigate this newly discovered UFO hotspot. For more than 2 years now, the jungles of northeastern Brazil have played host to throngs of pilgrims, people who travel from all over the world to the small town of Bacharite. Here, at precisely 2 p.m. on the first Saturday of each month, UFOs appear and hover with such regularity that crowds of up to 10,000 people have witnessed the phenomenon.
It was a pulsing moon, blue, and then it became an intense green, turning around, pulsating. It's not a hallucination.
Those of us who were prepared with still and video cameras verified that there indeed were unidentified disc-shaped flying objects in the sky. That is, flying saucers. Immediately we aimed the still cameras, pointing them in that direction, and we documented the presence of 6 flying saucers.
Reginaldo Atayive is head of CPU, one of Brazil's oldest and most respected paranormal research organizations. Since 1994, CPU has gathered an impressive gallery of UFO photographs, as well as collateral data about strange physical effects generated by the monthly visitations.
On the first day of October 1994, when we photographed the UFOs, our equipment detected a very strong electromagnetic field. The static in the atmosphere increased to a frightening level, and it made the hair of those 6,000 people stand on end.
At the same time that CPU was studying the UFOs from a scientific point of view, word spread throughout Brazil that what was happening in Bacharite was a religious miracle, a modern-day appearance of the Virgin Mary.
I don't understand anything about ufology. I couldn't say I'm here with the faith that it's something from God. I felt the presence of the Lord. The only ones who don't feel it are the ones who don't have faith. The Virgin speaks to us through the sun.
Some scholars have compared UFO apparitions to apparitions of angels and saints and the Virgin Mary.
John Saliba is a professor of religious studies at the University of Detroit. He has written several papers on the various religious interpretations of the UFO phenomenon.
They come to warn us of disaster. They come to give us spiritual advice. They come to help us in our struggles here on Earth. And since they are, of course, superior to us, immensely superior to us, they have a lot to teach us.
The religious overtones of the Bacharite sightings have also caught the attention of South America's leading UFO researcher and author, Irene Gronke. The sightings are remarkably similar to ones Gronke investigated more than 20 years ago in southern Brazil.
A little girl of 5 watched a UFO emitting a beam of light to the opposite side, where her mother and sisters were watching the clouds and saw Jesus Christ sitting and Our Lady. But it was a hologram. It was not the real thing.
Gronke is now working with Reginaldo Atayive and CPU on the Bacharite sightings. It is a unique cooperative effort, exploring the UFOs here from both scientific and spiritual perspectives.
The religious people were very resentful of the scientific people, and vice versa. The society I direct, which is CISNY, we study the two sides, and we are more prone to accept scientists together with mysticism.
On her most recent visit, Gronke examined new photographic evidence at CPU headquarters, and she spent several hours at the local newspaper's archives, studying the trend of press accounts.
Of course, this is very important for us ufologists when both the press and the authenticity of the photos is proved.
The following day was the first Saturday of the month, and a sightings investigative team accompanied Brazil's preeminent ufologists to Bacharite. At 2 p.m., a local religious leader announced the arrival of the Virgin Mary, and all eyes turned to the sky. Although no one on our team nor anyone in the Brazilian contingent saw any UFOs, many people in attendance were sure that they had had a supernatural vision.
It was the pupil of the Virgin Mary, from the eye of the Virgin Mary.
Based on her investigation at the site, Gronke believes that the Bacharite sightings are being viewed from two angles, the scientific and metaphysical, and that like a two-way mirror, your angle determines what you will see.
I believe that throughout the ages, our extraterrestrial superior beings have been trying to teach mankind progress in ethical codes, and have used the means proper to the state of preparation that they found the populaces in. They are now trying to take us a step further. That is why it's so important that Ataide